What's going on, guys? Philip at Trade Genius. Hope you guys are having a good week. A lot of volatility across all markets, stock market, everything, and even Bitcoin. And I wanted to talk to you guys about, basically what's going on in the world and coronavirus and all that stuff and how it's affecting Bitcoin. And we're going to take a look at how the markets are comparing to Bitcoin's performance here. And we'll look at a few different charts. So let's dive into this video. It's pretty important and check it out.
Trade Genius.
Okay, guys, so basically we've run up. Remember, we talked about we were getting a bearish divergence, so pulling back a bit into this weekly block of support wasn't a surprise. I am surprised with this move down, but not in the context that we're starting to see basically a global liquidity drain. And what I mean by that is people are getting scared and they're going to what they traditionally have, right? I'm talking traditional markets now. They're going to things like bonds or going to cash. Now, Bitcoin at times has sustained against these types of pullbacks, but in this one, I think it's getting caught up in the outflows from the stock market. Reason being is if you look at GBTC, right? So this holds like 2% of the entire supply that's circulating, which that's a lot of Bitcoin. But you'll notice that premium has come way off. See, normally when we get into these bull runs, premium will pull back to like say 25%, right? And then bounce up. That's normally kind of what happens. We've gotten oversold. We're back into like the larger buy or accumulation or add-on to your position area with premium. But this largely coincides with what we're seeing in the S&P 500, right? That's kind of our benchmark as far as what stocks are doing. So if we were to compare that, we're just going to add the S&P 500, and let's drag this up here, and let's change the color to make this a little easier to see. Okay, so you can see, I mean, we're looking at large time frames going back to last year, December 2019, or in the first quarter of 2020, obviously. But you see Bitcoin, as Bitcoin was finishing its bear market, kind of caught up, right, to the equities. But now you're seeing this big drop. I mean, this is all really selling on the coronavirus fears, which I think the biggest catalysts are supply chain issues because China is effectively shutting down. Large portions of China are effectively shutting down. It's an extremely virulent strain, and they're trying to keep it contained, and it's proving to be very difficult. As such, we've got supply chain issues. I think the larger companies know that that's going to hit the bottom line. I think there's no way to escape a GDP hit on this whole thing. So what we're seeing is all the liquidity getting pulled out of the markets, and unfortunately, with GBTC, they're probably seeing a lot of sell pressure too, and because it's exposed to the stocks, right? So a lot of people invested in GBTC are also in the stock market. So if they're get flat on their positions with all of their stock holdings, that's happening with GBTC. So the shares come back to the fund. They don't have to have as much underlying GBTC, so that goes back and that gets sold. So there's sell pressure on these things that will affect spot price of BTC, unfortunately. So things like these funds will succumb to stock pressures and actually add bearish pressure on the spot price of BTC, even though it seems like it's a safe haven. How does it look compared to gold? That's the standard, right? So if we look at GC, that's the gold futures, and we'll just look at the continuous front, and let's drag this up. You'll notice gold actually has been sustaining a bit better. Its pullback really didn't start until the 24th, a couple of days ago, but it's also starting to go now, right? So everything is seeing some sell pressure. Again, bonds and cash are seemingly where things are going right now in a panic. So kind of the first time Bitcoin's seen like this global liquidity crunch, and it's also going down with the rest of it. So it's interesting to see how these things correlate. I would be looking for a disconnect. If we do see a disconnect, you're going to see Bitcoin and start to go up. And what I would look for also is the GBTC premium to start to rise, because that would be an interesting tell. But right now, you just have to assume that all we can look for right now are relief rallies until things fundamentally change with this virus. And since this is a virus-driven pullback, and I can tell you the virus is only going to get worse. So we can expect more downside. As such, if we look at the delta, this is going to tell us what the boys are doing with futures. This is going to be more hedging activity and things like that. We had a brief period where the delta flipped to positive with this light shading of blue on the 200-day. That was a potential bottom. Once this bottom gave out, that nice wick gave out, everything flipped over. And now it's a matter of shorting any relief rally. You're going to be shorting the WMA 20 on the 4-hour. At this point, it's going to be 92.68, and it's dropping every 4-hour bar. So WMA 20, WMA 65 are the two that I look for as far as where price would bounce off of in this situation. So unless something drastically, fundamentally happens with regards to the virus, you have to respect that risk is off. It's affecting Bitcoin, and you want to be shorting the relief rallies. So any bounce up, relief bounce up, I think is going to be, you basically want to, if you're looking to leg out of a position long or in GBTC, I think that's where it happens up there, and then wait for this to settle down. But I don't think the downside is over here. That being said, if we look at the futures, I know a lot of you guys have asked about this little gap here. Now, first of all, gaps don't ever have to close, right? That's just, there's nothing forcing that to happen. What happens is if price comes back into vicinity, because there's gaps on the S&P 500 that are many months old, and but when they come back into vicinity, that's when now everybody starts to look at those levels. So yes, there is a small gap here at 80. At the half gap is 85.65. The gap, as I would call it, to be closed would be 85.40. So looking at that, that if we get a relief rally, I would say that the risk is another downside move down to that level. And at this point, if we're down here already because the entire system is just kind of pulling back, right? The weak hands are dumping. You might as well get this out of the system and be done with it. But if there was no corona outbreak, I really highly doubt we'd be dealing with these levels right now. This could have been maybe a post-halving move. You get a corrective phase post-halving. That wouldn't be out of the question. But the whole virus thing has created just a whole different fundamental field that we're dealing with. And you just have to be aware and adjust your context. So we also do have a bit of a head and shoulders pattern here too, which is bearish, right? So you need to keep that in mind. So here's the neckline that breaks. So again, any rallies come back up to this level, that 4-hour 200 period moving average, high likelihood we see a pretty strong rejection. Now, only reason I think this would change is if we start to see Bitcoin pull away from the stock indices and you see a break from the correlation, because right now it's just correlating with the stock market pullback. So that's what I see. I hope that helps. We're going to be getting defensive in the room now at BTC and be watching for relief rallies and probably fading those guys, unfortunately, until this blows over. And then I think once things stabilize, ultimately that halving approaching is going to keep putting bullish pressure on price. We've never just seen Bitcoin quit this far out in front of halving. That being said, we've never seen Bitcoin during a global liquidity crisis either, which is starting to become an issue. So interesting times, new stuff for Bitcoin to encounter. But we also have the halving dynamics. So there's a lot of cross currents here, and it's not going to be easy. I'm just going to say that right now. But this is, I think, the most highest probability outcome here is a relief rally and then another smackdown. All right, guys, that's it for this video. I hope it helps. Stay safe out there. Stay on your toes. I will catch you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.
Trade Genius.